Let's be honest, Darth Nihilus is one of the most interesting characters that was brought into Knights of the Old Republic 2. He had one of the coolest designs, he was ominous, he sounded pretty badass, and despite his relative disappointment in terms of what he stood for in the story by the end of the game, what cannot be denied is the general influence that Darth Nihilus had on many people. But for me, an interesting question is, did Darth Nihilus truly die? We know that Darth Nihilus is in some way or another already dead. In case you're not aware, Darth Nihilus isn't a physical being anymore. What you are meant to see in the game is essentially reanimated clothing that is mimicking the form of a physical being. But underneath there is just nothing. Before the events of Knights of the Old Republic 2, that wound within his soul that was driving him to consume the Force was actually eroding him physically. It was withering his body and killing him slowly. So to survive this, he did the only thing he could really do, and that was he kind of killed himself. He literally took his spirit and he ripped it from his physical body, and then he placed his spirit within his armour, or as we know it, his robes. And of course, the same can be said for his mask. If you are unaware in the Star Wars universe, Darth Nihilus' mask actually allowed people to become Force sensitive. That's how powerful it was. The mask was the focal point of Darth Nihilus' will and power. Somebody who is completely and utterly devoid of sensitivity to the Force could place the mask upon their face and be bestowed with abilities strong enough to consider them a Sith apprentice. So it's quite scary to think what an actual Sith Lord in general, or even a Jedi, would become if they managed to get a hold of the mask. But to our knowledge, that mask was never recovered or used by anybody in that sense. However, we do know that at some point a bunch of smugglers tried to get the mask, but they crashed and died, which was quite possibly the mask's influence. So how could we, as the player, possibly have killed him if he was already dead and then placed his spirit into something that allows him to enact his will? And the short answer is, you don't. This may come as a surprise to many of you who are unaware of these facts, but you do not kill Darth Nihilus. You merely contain the monster back into his armour. You might see the Sith Lord drop to his knees and you may see him disappear in a red haze, but you don't actually kill the Lord of Hunger. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will try to counter this and say, well, didn't Visas Ma literally go up to his corpse and take his mask and say that she saw nothing but a man? Well, first and foremost, it's not very clear whether or not this is actually canon to the story. But let's be honest, how could Visas Ma take off his mask and literally see a human being underneath? She is blind. We know that Visas Ma saw literally through the Force. The Force created a kind of Daredevil effect where she could see colour regarding the alignment of whoever it was that she was looking at. So it stands to reason that Visas Ma couldn't have seen any different than what she used to see when she looked at Nihilus. Just a vague red form of some kind. But she couldn't have seen a literal man underneath because, one, there wasn't one, and two, her eyes didn't work. However, we do know what happens after Knights of the Old Republic 2, although not technically as a certainty in terms of how it happened, but the Sith Acolytes, or maybe assassins, or it could have been Sith fanboys or treasure hunters, recovered the armour after the destruction of the Ravager, so whether the assassins managed to maybe pick it up before it exploded, or maybe it was floating in space and they happened upon it, who knows. But these assassins, or fanboys, or however you want to see them, took the remnants of Darth Nihilus' armour to Korriban for burial. We don't know if there is a literal tomb dedicated to Darth Nihilus on Korriban, but we do know they placed it somewhere, so we can only presume that he does have one. Regardless of that fact, his spirit was encased within his armour, and that meant that as it travelled to Korriban, which was a dark side nexus, one of the most powerful, his spirit was literally able to reach out and connect to the planet itself, not just his armour. This meant that Darth Nihilus was able to stay within the physical realm of reality, but then another question comes up here. If he was able to stay in the physical realm of reality, why wasn't he able to return to power? And the truth is, there is no answer. We can only make our assumptions as to why Darth Nihilus never returned, and I personally have two theories on this front. The first theory is that Darth Nihilus didn't want to. It's quite possible that as his spirit settled into a literal dark side nexus, that this constant flow of dark energy sustained his hunger in some way or another. We know that Darth Nihilus was a being of intent. He was the embodiment of the dark side trying to consume the Force, but if he was somehow sustained through that nexus, it's quite possible that hunger was quelled in some way or another and he had no reason to return to power in the literal sense. My second theory is that the attempted consumption of a wound in the Force basically zapped him of all of his physical strength, to the point where even though he could connect with the physical plane of reality, he couldn't actually project his power outwards onto the physical plane of reality. I liken this similarly to Exar Kun, where the Nexus of Korriban allowed him to freely exist within the physical plane, but at the same time he couldn't physically manipulate the physical plane without any kind of external source to do that through. And on a dead planet like Korriban, there's not really many external sources to use, and even then, you probably need someone really powerful to hold the spirit of Darth Nihilus, and maybe there just wasn't anyone powerful enough for Nihilus to control in that sense. However, the obscurity around Darth Nihilus' existence beyond Knights of the Old Republic 2 does potentially open up some storytelling ideas for the future. Perhaps he'll come back in the Old Republic MMO in a future expansion in some way or another. Maybe he'll appear in Legacy of the Sith. Perhaps if they made a KOTOR 2 remake, they'll go more into depth on the story of Darth Nihilus and add important story elements to it that we didn't get before. And there is, of course, the possible introduction of him being in canon. Perhaps he could be a future villain or a future storytelling device, or a historical storytelling device, who knows. If there ever was a Knights of the Old Republic 2 remake though, I would absolutely adore for them to go more into depth on the story of Darth Nihilus. The truth is, there was supposed to be a lot more to Darth Nihilus in the base game. There was supposed to be more story, more exposition. There was supposed to be so much more general context regarding him as a character. But much like most things in Knights of the Old Republic 2, it was scrapped because they just didn't have the time. But what we do know is the fact that Darth Nihilus is not dead in the literal sense. We can just say he is dormant in one way or another. Let me know in the comment section below, do you think Darth Nihilus is dead? And more importantly, do you think they should bring him back in some way or another? Or do you think they should leave him buried in the past? As always, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to join the best KOTOR community on YouTube. Come and join my Discord server and follow me on Twitter. All links are in the description. And I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, may the Force be with you. Always.